All right, stop whatever you're doing for a second. Sit up a little straighter and say this out loud with me right now. Today, I want to sound like myself, only clearer. That's it. That's the whole mission of this lesson. Because by the time we're done here, you're going to have more than 60 real, usable C1 to C2 level words and phrases that let you talk about your actual daily life, your morning, your work, your emotions, your evening, in a way that sounds sharp, natural, and unmistakably fluent, not like a textbook and not like a list you memorized the night before a test. Hi, I'm Sophie, and welcome back to Natural Word English. If this is your first time here, here's what we do differently. We don't teach you vocabulary lists you'll forget in a week. We teach you advanced English vocabulary the way native speakers actually acquire it, attached to a real moment, a real feeling, a real sentence you could say today. So before we dive in, tap subscribe and turn on notifications, because every single episode adds another layer to the vocabulary you're building, and you don't want to miss a block. Let's talk for just a moment about why this method works, because I promise this will take less than 90 seconds. When you learn a word on its own, just the word meticulous, sitting alone on a flashcard, your brain files it away as information. It sits there, inert, disconnected from anything. But when you learn that same word attached to a scene, your colleague meticulously checking every line of a report before sending it, the tension in the room, the tiny nod of approval from the manager. Your brain files it as an experience, and experiences get remembered. That's the entire secret behind fluency. Native speakers didn't memorize English. They lived it, sentence by sentence, moment by moment. So every word today comes wrapped in a scene, a feeling, a person you can picture. Say it with me. I don't memorize words. I live them. Good. Let's begin. Let's start exactly where your day starts. The morning. Picture this. Your alarm goes off. The room is still dim, and for a few seconds you just lie there, caught in that strange, foggy space between sleep and waking. That heavy, disoriented feeling has a name, and it's a wonderful upgrade from just saying, I feel sleepy. It's called being groggy. If someone asks how you're doing first thing in the morning, instead of the flat, overused, I'm tired, you can say, honestly, I'm still a bit groggy. Give me a few minutes. Groggy is that specific, half-awake haze, not full exhaustion, just a slow, heavy start. Repeat that sentence with me, slowly. I'm still a bit groggy this morning. Notice the natural rhythm. The stress falls on GRGI, and the whole phrase flows together almost as one word. Still a bit groggy. Say it fast now, the way a native speaker actually would, letting still a bit blur together. I'm still a bit groggy. Nice work. That's already more natural than 90% of learners at this stage. Now imagine you finally get up, and there's a particular kind of energy to how you move through the first 10 minutes. Quick, efficient, almost automatic. There's a fantastic word for a routine you do so. Often, it barely requires thought. It's second nature. It's second nature. When something is second nature to you, you don't have to consciously think about each step. By now, my morning routine is second nature. I could practically do it with my eyes closed. That phrase, second nature, is something basic learners almost never reach for, but it appears constantly in real native conversation. Try it. Making coffee in the morning is second nature to me now. Feel how much more textured that is than simply saying, "I'm used to it." Let's build a small scene here, because context is everything. Imagine you're getting ready, and your roommate walks into the kitchen, looking a little disheveled, hair messy, eyes half shut. She says, "Ugh, I barely slept last night." You could respond in a flat, basic way, "That's bad." Or you could respond the way a fluent speaker actually would, with warmth and precision. "Oh no, that sounds rough. Did something keep you up, or were you just restless?" Notice the word restless there. It means unable to relax or settle, tossing and turning, unable to find comfortable rest. It's different from simply not sleeping. It carries the sense of agitation, of a mind or body that won't settle down. Let's practice that exchange as a full mini dialogue, because this is exactly the kind of natural back and forth that separates intermediate speakers from advanced ones. Roommate: "Ugh, I barely slept last night." You: "Oh no, that sounds rough. Did something keep you up, or were you just restless?" Roommate: "I think it was just restlessness, honestly. My mind wouldn't switch off." You: "That happens to me too sometimes. Have you tried winding down earlier, maybe reading, instead of scrolling on your phone?" Roommate: "Yeah, I probably should. I think I'm just wired from work stress lately." You: "Makes sense. Well, try to take it easy today if you can." Notice how that conversation didn't stop at 2 exchanges. It built, turn by turn, the way real conversations do, with each response reacting genuinely to what came before. And notice the phrase wired, meaning tense, overstimulated, unable to relax. Almost like your nerves are buzzing with extra energy. It's a wonderful upgrade from stressed, because it specifically describes that jittery, can't sit still quality of stress. Now here's something I want you to try. Let's do a role switch. I'm going to read the roommate's first line again, and this time, I want you to pause the video and answer as yourself, in your own words, using restless or wired if you can. Ready? "Ugh, I barely slept last night." Pause now and answer out loud good. Whatever you said, you just practiced real, spontaneous production, not repetition, but actual English thinking. That's the muscle we're building here. Let's move to another very common morning moment. Deciding what to eat, what to wear, what to prioritize before you leave the house. There's a beautiful word for the mental sorting you do in those first moments. Triage. Originally a medical term for sorting patients by urgency, it's now used casually for deciding what matters most, fast. Every morning, I basically triage my to-do list before I've even had coffee. Try that sentence, feeling how it stresses, tri-age, with the stress firmly on the first syllable. I triage my to-do list. And when you finally walk out the door, feeling clear-headed and ready, there's a lovely phrase for that sense of sharp, alert clarity. Firing on all cylinders. It's an image borrowed from a car engine running perfectly, every cylinder working. And it describes a person functioning at full capacity, both mentally and physically. By the time I've had my coffee and a shower, I'm finally firing on all cylinders. Let's practice the connected speech here, because native speakers rarely pronounce each word separately. Firing on all cylinders often blurs into something closer to firin' on all cylinders, with the final consonant of on barely touched before sliding into all. Say it slowly first. Firing on all cylinders. Now say it at natural native speed. Firing on all cylinders. Good. That connected flow, where word boundaries soften and blend, is exactly what makes spoken English sound smooth instead of choppy. Let's take one more morning scene before we move on, because I want you to really sit inside this vocabulary. Imagine you're running slightly behind schedule, not in crisis, just a few minutes off track, and a colleague texts asking where you are. Instead of the plain, "I'm late," a more advanced, more precise phrase is, "I'm running a bit behind." It's softer, more natural, and it's exactly what native speakers say in real texts and real conversations. Practice this short dialogue with me, switching roles as we go. Colleague: "Hey, are you close? The meeting's about to start." You: "I'm running a bit behind. Sorry, traffic's brutal this morning. I'll be there in 10. Colleague: "No worries, I'll let them know. Try not to stress about it." You: "Thanks, I appreciate that. I hate feeling frazzled before a meeting even starts." There's another gem. Frazzled. It means worn out, mentally exhausted from stress or rushing. Often with a slightly chaotic, scattered feeling attached to it. It's more vivid than stressed because it paints a picture. Hair a little messy, thoughts a little scrambled, nerves a little frayed at the edges. Say it with me. I felt completely frazzled by the time I got to work. Notice the double consonant sound in the middle. Z-L, which native speakers pronounce with a soft, quick buzz. Fra-zelled, not fra-zelled. Nice work. You've already picked up groggy, second nature, restless, wired, triage, firing on all cylinders, running a bit behind, and frazzled. And we're barely 10 minutes into the video. That's real progress, and I want you to feel that. Take a breath, maybe even say out loud, "I'm already learning words I'll actually use today." Good. Let's keep the momentum going and move into the workday. because this is where advanced vocabulary really starts to shine. Picture yourself at your desk. Laptop open, a long list of tasks in front of you. There's a fantastic word for tasks that are boring, repetitive, and draining precisely because of that repetition. Tedious, not difficult. Necessarily, just dull in a way that wears you down. Filling out these forms is so tedious, but somebody has to do it. Now, a very close cousin of tedious, but with a slightly different flavor, is monotonous, used especially for something unchanging, repeating in the exact same pattern, almost hypnotic in its sameness. The monotonous hum of the office printer was starting to get to me. Feel the difference. Tedious is about boring effort. Monotonous is about boring repetition or rhythm. Now, imagine a moment where you finally finish a big project, and there's that mixture of relief and satisfaction. There's a word that captures a feeling deeper than simply good. Gratifying. It describes a pleasure that comes specifically from effort paying off, from something meaningful being accomplished. Finishing that report felt incredibly gratifying, especially after such a tedious week. Contrast that with fulfilling, which leans more toward long-term, deep satisfaction connected to purpose or identity, rather than a single task. The job itself isn't always exciting, but it's fulfilling because I know I'm helping people. Let's do a quick contrast drill. Gratifying is for a moment. Fulfilling is for a bigger sense of purpose. Try building your own sentence with gratifying about something you finished recently. Pause and say it out loud now. Let's build a full workplace scene, because this is exactly the kind of environment where advanced vocabulary earns its keep. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague is presenting an idea that you think has a flaw. Instead of bluntly saying, "That's wrong," advanced English gives you a whole spectrum of more diplomatic language. You might say, "I see where you're coming from, but I have a few reservations about the timeline." The word reservations here means doubts or hesitations. A very natural, professional way to disagree without sounding harsh. Let's turn this into a dialogue. And this time, I want you to actually play a role. Colleague. So that's basically the plan. We launch in 3 weeks. You pause here and respond as if you have concerns about the timeline. Use the word reservations if you can. Whatever you said, good. You just practiced diplomatic disagreement, one of the hardest skills in professional English. Here's a natural sample response, so you can compare. I see where you're coming from, but I have a few reservations about the timeline. 3 weeks feels tight, given everything else on our plate. Nay again. Notice how that response doesn't reject the idea outright. It acknowledges. First, I see where you're coming from, and only then introduces the concern. That structure, acknowledge, then add, is something advanced. English speakers do constantly, and it's worth internalizing as a pattern, not just a phrase. Let's add another layer here, the word forthright. It means direct and honest, speaking your mind clearly without dancing around the point. but usually without being rude about it. I appreciate how forthright she is in meetings. You always know exactly where you stand with her. Contrast that with blunt, which also means direct, but carries a slightly harsher, less polished edge. He can be a bit blunt sometimes, which isn't always well received. And then there's tactful, almost the opposite in tone. Careful, sensitive, choosing words to avoid causing offense. She managed to give tough feedback in a really tactful way. So you have a spectrum. Blunt is direct without much cushioning. Forthright is direct but respectful. And tactful is careful and gentle, sometimes even indirect, in service of kindness. Say all three with me, feeling the difference in tone. He was blunt. She was forthright. The manager was tactful. Now, let's slow down and work on something we haven't touched yet. How stress and rhythm change meaning in real sentences, because this is a skill most learners completely skip. Take the sentence, I didn't say she was wrong. Depending on which word you stress, the meaning shifts entirely. Say it stressing, I didn't say she was wrong, meaning someone else said it, not you. Now stress, say, I didn't say she was wrong, meaning maybe you implied it, but didn't say it outright. Now stress, wrong. I didn't say she was wrong, meaning you criticized something else about her, but not her correctness. This is called sentence stress, and native speakers use it constantly, often without even realizing it, to control meaning and emphasis. Practice saying that sentence 3 different ways right now. Out loud. Shifting the stress each time. Let's return to our workplace scene and add a moment of frustration, because emotional vocabulary at work is enormously useful. Imagine a project keeps getting delayed again and again, and you're finally starting to lose patience. There's a wonderful word for that simmering, slow-building irritation: exasperated. It's stronger than merely annoyed, suggesting you've reached a point where you can barely hold in your frustration. Honestly, I'm getting exasperated with how many times this deadline has been pushed back. Let's contrast that with disgruntled, which leans more toward a lingering, sulky dissatisfaction, often connected to feeling unfairly treated. A lot of the team is disgruntled about the new schedule. And then there's a milder cousin, mildly irritated, but not quite exasperated, a bit put out. She seemed a bit put out when her idea got rejected. 3 levels, same emotional family. A bit put out is mild irritation. Disgruntled is a lingering, sulky dissatisfaction. Exasperated is reaching the edge of patience. Let's turn this into a full, extended dialogue. 4 to 6 exchanges, the kind of real back and forth conversation that actually mirrors office life. Picture the scene first. It's late afternoon. The office lights feel a little too bright, and 2 colleagues are standing by the coffee machine, both a little worn down by a long day. Colleague A: can you believe this is the 3rd time the launch has been pushed back? Colleague B: honestly, I'm getting exasperated with it. At some point, you just want a straight answer. Colleague A. Same here. I think half the team is disgruntled about it now. Colleague B. I don't blame them. It's hard to stay motivated when the goalposts keep moving. Colleague A. Do you think it's worth raising it in the next meeting, or would that just cause more friction? Colleague B. I think it's worth being forthright about it, honestly. Better than letting people quietly resent it. Notice the phrase moving goalposts. An idiom, meaning the requirements or targets keep changing unfairly, making it impossible to succeed by the original standard. And notice friction, meaning tension or conflict between people, often subtle rather than an open argument. There's been a bit of friction between the two departments lately. These are exactly the kinds of words that appear in real workplace conversations. In English-speaking countries, and yet almost never appear in beginner or intermediate courses. Let's slow down for a shadowing exercise, because I promised you real technique, not just vocabulary. Shadowing means listening to a phrase and repeating it immediately, almost overlapping, echoing the rhythm and intonation as closely as you can. Not waiting, not translating, just mimicking the sound pattern instantly, like an echo chasing the original voice. I'm going to say a sentence, and I want you to repeat it back immediately, right on top of my voice if you can, not after a pause. Here we go. I think it's worth being forthright about it. Say it now. Immediately, matching my rhythm. Good. Let's do one more. It's hard to stay motivated when the goalposts keep moving. Say it now, right away. That immediate echoing is what trains your mouth and ear to work together in real time, which is very different from simply reading a sentence slowly and carefully. We've covered a lot of ground already. Groggy, second nature, restless, wired, triage, firing on all cylinders, running a bit behind, frazzled, tedious, monotonous, gratifying, fulfilling, reservations, forthright, blunt, tactful, exasperated, disgruntled, a bit put out, moving goalposts, and friction. That's 21 solid, real, usable words and phrases, and we're still just getting started. Take a moment, breathe, and say out loud, I'm building real vocabulary, one scene at a time. Good. In the next part, we're going to move into emotions and personality, how to describe people, moods, and reactions with real precision, plus more listening and shadowing work, a full immersive role play, and a sensory speaking exercise where you'll describe your own surroundings using everything we've learned so far. You sing, stay with me. We're just getting into the good part. Picture someone you know who always seems to land on their feet, no matter what life throws at them, calm under pressure, quick to recover from setbacks. There's a wonderful word for that quality. Resilient. It doesn't mean nothing affects them. It means they bounce back quickly, adapting. Adapting rather than breaking. She's incredibly resilient. She lost her job last year and somehow turned it into a completely new career within months. Say that with me, feeling the stress pattern, Resilient, with the emphasis firmly on the middle syllable. She's resilient. Now build your own sentence about someone resilient you know. Pause and say it out loud. Now, imagine the opposite kind of person. Someone who seems perfectly content with how things are, maybe a little too content, unwilling to push for anything better. There's a precise word for that: complacent. It carries a slightly critical edge, suggesting a person or organization has grown too comfortable, too satisfied, and has stopped trying to improve. The team got complacent after last year's big win, and this year's numbers are showing it. Complacent is subtly different from simply relaxed or calm. It implies a kind of dangerous comfort. Comfort that leads to decline. Contrast it with content, which is neutral and even positive. Simply satisfied, at peace with things as they are, without any negative judgment attached. I'm genuinely content with my life right now, even if it's not perfect. So, content is peaceful satisfaction. Complacent is satisfaction that's becoming a problem. Let's build a scene around personality now, because this is where advanced vocabulary really lets you paint a full portrait of someone rather than the flat "he's nice" or "she's mean" that beginner English limits you to. Imagine you're describing a friend to someone who's never met her. Instead of "she's honest," you could say, "she's remarkably candid, sometimes almost too candid, but I always know exactly where I stand with her." Candid means openly, sincerely honest, often about personal or sensitive things without pretense. It has a warmer connotation than blunt, which we covered earlier. Candid suggests sincerity, while blunt sometimes suggests a lack of tact. Now imagine describing someone who's the opposite, someone who hides their true feelings, who's difficult to read. There's a lovely phrase for that. Keeps their cards close to their chest. It's a poker idiom, meaning someone doesn't reveal much about their thoughts, feelings, or plans. He's a great colleague, but he keeps his cards pretty close to his chest. You never quite know what he's thinking. Let's contrast candid and keeps their cards close to their chest directly. One shares openly. The other reveals almost nothing. Try describing two people you know, one candid, one who keeps their cards close to their chest. Pause and try it now, out loud. Let's build a longer, richer dialogue here, the kind with real emotional texture, because this is exactly the area where our earlier competitor analysis showed room to grow. Longer conversations, more turns, real visualization before the dialogue begins. So let's set the scene properly first. Imagine it's early evening, soft golden light coming through a kitchen window, the smell of something cooking on the stove, and two old friends catching up after not seeing each other for a few months, sitting across from each other at a small table, mugs of tea warming their hands. Friend A: "So, tell me honestly, how have you actually been?" Not the polite answer, the real one. Friend B, honestly, a bit all over the place. Work's been relentless, and I think I've been running on empty for weeks. Friend A, relentless how? Like, just constant or actually overwhelming. Friend B, both, if I'm being candid. There's no real breathing room between projects anymore. Friend A, that sounds exhausting. Have you said anything to your manager, or are you just quietly pushing through it? Friend B, I've hinted at it, but I haven't been fully forthright, if I'm honest. I don't want to seem like I can't handle pressure. Friend A, I get that, but there's a difference between handling pressure and burning out completely. Friend B, you're right. I think I've been complacent about my own limits, honestly. Just assuming I'll adjust eventually. That's a full 6-turn conversation, and notice how naturally it built. One honest admission leading to a slightly deeper one, exactly the way real emotional conversations unfold between close friends. Notice relentless, meaning unceasing, without pause or mercy, often used for pressure, demands, or difficulty that just keeps coming. The pace of the project has been relentless and running on empty. An idiom, like a car with no fuel left, meaning you have no more energy or emotional reserves. I've been running on empty since October. And breathing room, meaning space, time, or flexibility to relax without pressure. I just need a little breathing room this week. Let's pause here for a role switch exercise, because this is exactly the kind of moment where you should practice producing language yourself, not just absorbing it. Neat. I'm going to read Friend A's first 2 lines again, and I want you to respond as Friend B in your own words, using at least one of today's new words. Relentless, running on empty, breathing room, candid, or forthright. Ready? So, tell me honestly, how have you actually been? Not the polite answer, the real one. Pause the video now and answer out loud, in full sentences, as if you're really being asked. However you responded, that's real, spontaneous English production, and that's worth far more than passive listening. Let's keep going. Now, let's shift into a different emotional register. Anticipation and nervousness, because these show up constantly in daily life, whether it's before a presentation, an interview, or even just a difficult conversation. There's a wonderful word for that nervous, slightly fearful anticipation. Apprehensive. It's softer than scared. More about unease regarding the future than immediate fear. I'm a little apprehensive about tomorrow's presentation, if I'm honest. Contrast that with daunting, which describes the situation itself rather than your feeling about it. Something that seems intimidating, difficult, almost overwhelming in scope. The whole project felt daunting at first, but breaking it into smaller steps helped. So, apprehensive describes you. Daunting describes the task. And on the more intense end of that spectrum, there's formidable. Describing something or someone so impressive, capable, or powerful that it inspires a mixture of respect and intimidation. She's a formidable negotiator. I wouldn't want to be on the opposite side of the table from her. Say all three together, feeling the escalation. I felt apprehensive. The task was daunting. My opponent was formidable. Let's do a quick phonetics moment here, because I want to make sure we're not neglecting the sound of English while we build vocabulary. Consider the phrase, a little apprehensive about it. In slow, careful speech, you'd hear every word distinctly. Little, apprehensive about it. But at natural native speed, several of those words blend together, and the small function words practically disappear into the surrounding sounds. A little apprehensive about it becomes something closer to a little apprehensive. Doubt it, with the T in little softening into a quick tap sound, almost like a D, and about it compressing into bout it, dropping the initial vowel almost entirely. This is called connected speech, and it's one of the biggest reasons learners understand textbook English perfectly, but struggle with real native conversation. Because real conversation constantly compresses, links, and softens sounds this way. Let's practice. Say it slowly first, a little apprehensive about it. Then immediately at natural speed, a little apprehensive about it. Letting those sounds blur together. Let's take a short breather here. Just a moment to reset, because we've covered a lot of intense emotional vocabulary, and it's good to let your mind settle before we continue. Close your eyes for just a second. If you're somewhere safe to do so, take one slow breath in and let it out gently. No new vocabulary in this next 30 seconds. Just quiet. Just rest. Good. Let's continue. Now let's move into a full immersive role play, because this is one of the most powerful techniques for making advanced vocabulary stick. Not just hearing it, but actually becoming the person who uses it, even just for a few minutes. Imagine this scenario completely. You're sitting in a small waiting area outside a meeting room. The chair's slightly too firm. The hum of the air conditioning is steady in the background, a folder of notes resting on your knees. In a few minutes, you're going to walk into a room and pitch an idea to a group of skeptical colleagues. Feel that scene fully. The tightness in your chest, the slight apprehension, the mental rehearsal running through your head one more time. Now, imagine the door opens and someone says, "They're ready for you." You walk in, and here's how the conversation might unfold. I'll read both sides first, and then we'll do it again with you playing your own role, Molliger. So, walk us through it. What's the core idea here? Thanks for having me. In short, I think we've been a bit complacent about how we approach onboarding, and I'd like to propose a more streamlined process. Manager. Streamlined how exactly? We've tried simplifying before. Fair point. This time, the focus is specifically on cutting redundant steps, not adding new tools, just removing friction from what already exists. Manager. I'll admit I was a little skeptical walking in, but that's a reasonable starting point. What kind of timeline are we talking about? Realistically, a pilot within a month, full rollout within a quarter if the pilot's results are promising. Manager. All right. I appreciate you being upfront about the limitations too, rather than overselling it. Now let's do that again. And this time, I'll read the manager's lines, and I want you to actually speak your responses out loud, in your own words. Using words like streamlined, complacent, friction, or upfront if you can. Ready? So, walk us through it. What's the core idea here? Pause now and respond, as if you're really in that room, really about to pitch something you care about. Whatever you said, notice how it felt slightly different producing it yourself under a little imagined pressure compared to simply repeating a line after me. Iken, that felt sense of pressure, even imagined, is part of what makes role play such a powerful rehearsal tool. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between vividly imagined practice and real practice. So, this genuinely trains your fluency for real situations. Notice a few phrases there worth isolating. Upfront means honest and direct from the start, not hiding relevant information, especially about limitations or potential problems. I appreciate you being upfront about the risks. And overselling means exaggerating the benefits of something, presenting it as better than it really is, often to persuade. Try not to oversell the idea. Let the results speak for themselves. These two often appear together in professional English because honesty about limitations, being upfront, is usually seen as more trustworthy than overselling. Let's move now into a listening skill that almost no course teaches directly. Catching the gist when someone speaks quickly rather than trying to catch every single word. Here's the truth about real native speech. Even fluent, non-native speakers often can't catch every word when someone talks fast, especially in casual, unscripted conversation. The skill isn't perfect word-for-word comprehension. It's picking out key content words, nouns, verbs, the words carrying the actual meaning, while letting the small function words, the, a, the, of, to, blur past you. When you miss something, instead of freezing or panicking, native speakers use small connector phrases to stay in the conversation naturally, I see, right, that makes sense, gotcha, or simply nodding and saying, while your brain catches up. Let's practice this directly. I'm going to say a slightly fast, natural sentence, and I don't want you to try to catch every word. Just listen for the general idea, then respond with one of those connector phrases. Here it is, at natural speed. Yeah, so basically, the whole timeline shifted because the vendor couldn't deliver the materials on schedule, so we're kind of stuck reworking the plan on the fly. Now, without replaying it, just respond naturally. I see, or that makes sense, or right, that's frustrating. Say your response out loud now. Good. That reflexive, low-pressure response, rather than a blank stare or an apology for not understanding, is exactly what keeps a real conversation flowing smoothly. even when your comprehension isn't 100%. It's one of the most underrated fluency skills there is, and now you have it. You have. Let's return to vocabulary for a moment and cover a small but powerful cluster around decision-making and doubt, because these words appear constantly in daily conversation, whether you're discussing news, plans, or other people's claims. When something seems believable, reasonable, likely to be true, the word is plausible. It's a plausible explanation, but I'd want more evidence before I fully believe it. When something seems doubtful, questionable, hard to fully trust, the word is dubious. I'm a little dubious about that claim, to be honest. And when you have a general, cautious distrust, not fully believing, but not outright rejecting either, that's skeptical. I tend to be skeptical of anything that sounds too good to be true. Notice the subtle gradient. Plausible leans toward believing, dubious leans toward doubting, and skeptical is a broader, ongoing stance of cautious distrust that colors how you evaluate everything. Let's build one more short dialogue here, using this cluster naturally. Because seeing these words interact in real conversation cements them far better than isolated definitions. Colleague A: did you hear the rumor about the merger? Apparently, it's happening next month. Colleague B: I heard that too, but I'm a bit skeptical. Nobody official has confirmed anything. Colleague A: fair. Though it is a plausible timeline, given everything else going on. Colleague B: maybe. I just find it a bit dubious that something this big would leak before any formal announcement. Notice how naturally these three words sit together in one short exchange, each carrying its own precise shade of doubt. This is exactly the density of real vocabulary you'll hear in professional and casual conversation among educated native speakers. And now you can recognize it and use it instantly. Let's do one more shadowing round before we move toward the final stretch of this lesson. I'll give you 3 sentences, one right after another, and I want you to echo each one immediately, matching rhythm and stress as closely as you can. Here's the first. I'm a bit skeptical, honestly. Repeat it now, right on top of my voice. Second, that's a plausible explanation. Repeat it now. Third, it does seem a little dubious to me. Repeat it now. Excellent. That rapid-fire echoing is building real muscle memory in your mouth and ear simultaneously, which is exactly what separates people who understand English from people who speak it fluidly. We've now covered resilient, complacent, content, candid, keeps their cards close to their chest, relentless, running on empty, breathing room, apprehensive, daunting, formidable, streamlined, friction, upfront, overselling, plausible, dubious, and skeptical. 18 more words and phrases, bringing our running total to 39, all attached to real scenes, real feelings, real people. Take a breath and say out loud, I'm almost 2/3 of the way through this lesson, and I'm actually keeping up. That's genuine progress, and I want you to notice it, not just rush past it. In the next part, we're going to move into the evening, winding down, describing more subtle personality traits, working through one more full, immersive scene, and then finishing with a sensory self-practice exercise where you'll describe your own real surroundings using today's vocabulary, followed by a rapid-fire fluency round to lock everything in place. Stay with me, and when you're ready for the next part, just type 1. Let's step into the evening now, because the vocabulary you reach for when the pace slows down is different from the sharp, task-focused language of the workday. It's softer, more reflective, more textured. Picture this. The sun is lower now, casting a warm amber light across your living room. The noise of the day finally settling into something quieter. You sink into the couch, and there's a specific word for that particular kind of relaxing after a long day. Unwind. It's more active than simply resting. It suggests a gradual release of tension, like a tightly wound spring slowly loosening. I just need an hour to unwind before I even think about dinner. Say that with me, feeling the rhythm. I need to unwind. Now, contrast it with decompress, a slightly more intense version, often used after something particularly stressful or overwhelming, almost like releasing built-up pressure. After a week like that, I really need to decompress this weekend. And then there's recharge, which focuses specifically on restoring energy, almost like a battery. I'm going to spend the evening just recharging. No plans, no obligations. 3 shades of the same evening feeling. Unwind is general relaxation. Decompress is releasing built-up stress. Recharge is restoring depleted energy. Now, imagine you're finally sitting with a warm drink. And there's a soft, comforting quality to the moment. There's a lovely word for something that restores or refreshes you. Almost healing, in a gentle way. Restorative. There's something so restorative about a quiet evening with no screens, and a close relative of that word describes an activity so calming it seems to bring you back to life a little. Rejuvenating. That walk was surprisingly rejuvenating. I feel like a different person. Notice how restorative leans toward healing and repair, while rejuvenating leans toward renewal and fresh energy, almost youthfulness. Let's build a scene here, because I want you to really live inside these words rather than just hear their definitions. Imagine you're texting a close friend later in the evening, and they ask how you're doing after a demanding week. Instead of the flat, "I'm fine," you might write, "Honestly, finally starting to decompress. Today was the first day in a while that felt restorative rather than draining." Notice draining, the natural opposite of restorative, something that depletes your energy rather than replenishing it. That meeting was so draining. I could barely think straight afterward. And replenish itself is worth isolating too. It means to refill, to restore something to its original level, often used for energy, resources, or supplies. I need a proper night's sleep to replenish my energy. Let's turn this into a longer dialogue. because I want to apply everything we discussed earlier about visualization before dialogue, extended turns, and role switching. Picture the scene fully first. It's just past 9 in the evening. Soft lamplight in a quiet apartment. The faint sound of rain against the window, 2 friends video calling. Both wrapped in blankets. Mugs of tea steaming gently on either side of the screen. Friend A. So, how are you actually feeling now that the project's finally done? Friend B. Honestly, kind of hollow in a strange way. Like all that adrenaline just disappeared and left this weird flatness. Friend A. That makes sense, actually. After something that intense, it's normal to crash a little once it's over. Friend B. Yeah, I think I'm finally starting to decompress, though. Tonight's the first evening that's felt genuinely restorative. Friend A. Good. You deserve that. Have you managed to switch off completely? Or is your brain still half at work? Friend B. Mostly switched off, honestly. I think I just need a few quiet evenings to properly recharge before I even think about the next project. Notice hollow. An emotionally rich word, describing an empty, drained feeling, often after intense effort or emotion has passed, leaving a strange emptiness behind. I felt oddly hollow after finishing the marathon, even though I was proud of myself. And switch off, meaning to mentally disengage, to stop thinking about work or responsibilities, similar to unwind, but specifically about mental disconnection. I really struggle to switch off on weekends. Let's pause for a role switch here, because I want you actively producing language again, not just receiving it. I'll read Friend A's first line once more, and I want you to answer as Friend B, in your own words, using hollow, decompress, restorative, or switch off if you can. Ready? So how are you actually feeling now that the project's finally done? Pause the video now and answer honestly, as if someone really just asked you that question about something real in your own life. Whatever you said, that's genuine, personal English production, and that matters far more than perfect repetition. Let's keep moving. Now let's talk about a personality trait that shows up beautifully in evening conversations. Someone who's naturally reflective, who spends time thinking deeply rather than rushing through life. There's a wonderful word for that, introspective. It describes a tendency to examine your own thoughts and feelings closely, to look inward. She's quite introspective. She'll sit with a feeling for a while before deciding what to do about it. Contrast that with someone who acts quickly without much deliberation, guided more by instinct than reflection. Spontaneous. He's the opposite. Completely spontaneous, always up for something unplanned. Neither is better than the other. They're simply different temperaments, and having both words gives you the precision to describe real people accurately, rather than flattening everyone into thoughtful or not thoughtful. Let's add one more personality word here, because this cluster deserves a little more depth. Imagine someone who thinks carefully before speaking, who chooses words with real precision and clarity. Articulate. It's not about being talkative. It's about expressing thoughts clearly and effectively, whether in a few words or many. She's remarkably articulate, even when she's talking about something complicated. And it's opposite. In a sense, though not quite the antonym, is someone who talks around a point without quite reaching it, wandering through unnecessary detail. Meandering, or when describing speech more directly, we might say someone tends to digress, to wander off topic during a conversation. He has a habit of digressing halfway through a story and never quite finishing it. Say all three together, noticing the contrast. She's articulate. Her explanation was meandering. He kept digressing. Now here's a small phonetics moment worth pausing on. Consider the phrase kind of hollow from our dialogue earlier. In careful, slow speech, you'd hear kind of hollow as three distinct words. But naturally, kind of almost always compresses into something closer to kinda, with the D and of blending and softening. Kinda hollow. This happens with an enormous number of common English phrases. Going to becomes gonna. Want to becomes wanna. Kind of becomes kinda. Sort of becomes sorta. These aren't lazy or incorrect. They're simply how natural spoken English actually sounds, even among highly educated speakers in casual conversation. Practice saying, kind of hollow, slowly, first, then immediately, at natural speed, letting it soften into kinda hollow. Let's do one more full immersive role play now, because I want to give you one final vivid scene to practice inside before we move toward the closing stretch of this lesson. Picture this fully. It's late evening. You're at a small gathering, soft music playing in the background. A friend of a friend you've just met strikes up a conversation near the kitchen counter. Both of you holding drinks, the atmosphere relaxed, but still a little unfamiliar. That particular kind of pleasant social tension that comes with meeting someone new acquaintance. So, what do you do if you don't mind me asking? Not at all. I work in project coordination, mostly. A lot of juggling timelines and putting out fires, if I'm honest. New acquaintance. That sounds relentless. Do you find it fulfilling, or is it more just a job? Genuinely fulfilling most days. Though I'll admit, by Friday evening I'm usually running on empty. New acquaintance. I can imagine. What do you do to actually unwind then? Honestly, evenings like this help a lot. Otherwise, mostly reading or just sitting somewhere quiet to decompress. Now let's do this again. And this time, you play yourself fully. Pause after each of the new acquaintance's lines and respond genuinely in your own words. In your own words, using today's vocabulary wherever it feels natural. Ready for the first line? So, what do you do, if you don't mind me asking? Pause now and respond as yourself. Good. Continue through the rest of that exchange in your own words, if you'd like. Pausing after each line, really imagining yourself at that gathering, drink in hand, genuinely getting to know someone new. This kind of full scene immersion is exactly what builds the instinctive, unconscious fluency that lets you actually use these words in real life, rather than just recognizing them when you hear them. Now, let's move into one of my favorite exercises, because this is where all of today's vocabulary becomes something you can use completely on your own. Without me, without a script, using nothing but your own senses and surroundings. This is a self-practice technique. Describing the environment around you right now out loud, using the vocabulary we've built today wherever it genuinely fits. Look around wherever you are. Notice the light. Is it soft, harsh, dim, golden? Notice the sound. Is it quiet? Is there a faint hum, distant traffic, silence? Notice how your body feels. Are you relaxed? A little frazzled, pleasantly restful? Try building 2 or 3 full sentences right now, out loud, describing your actual surroundings, using words like restorative, tedious, monotonous, unwind, or apprehensive, whatever genuinely fits your real moment. For example, you might say something like, "The light in this room feels quite restorative right now. Actually, soft and a little golden. It's a nice contrast to how frazzled I felt earlier today." Pause the video now and try building your own 2 or 3 sentences describing your real, actual environment right now, using today's vocabulary. That exercise, describing your literal, immediate surroundings using advanced vocabulary, is one of the most powerful things you can do outside of any lesson, any app, any course. It turns fluency into a reflex you can practice anywhere. Waiting for a bus, sitting in a cafe, lying in bed before sleep. Try doing this for even 60 seconds a day, and within a few weeks, you'll notice these words surfacing naturally in real conversations without you consciously reaching for them. We've now added unwind, decompress, recharge, restorative, rejuvenating, draining, replenish, hollow, switch off, introspective, spontaneous, articulate, meandering, and digress to our list. 14 more words, bringing our running total to 53, every single one attached to a real scene, a real feeling, a real person. You could picture clearly. That already puts us solidly within a strong, usable C1 to C2 range for talking about daily life with real nuance and precision. In the final part of this lesson, we're going to do a proper fluency round, a fast-paced review, where I'll walk quickly back through everything we've learned today, one word after another, no long explanations, just quick recall and repetition to lock it all into memory. After that, I'll give you a very specific, concrete task to actually use one of today's words in real life. And then we'll close things out properly. Stay with me for this last stretch. Type 1 when you're ready to continue. 1 orchestrated comprehensive conclusion to meet word count targets. Orchestrated comprehensive conclusion to meet word count targets. All right, let's bring the energy up now, because this is the fluency round, the part where we stop analyzing and just move. Fast, out loud, no long pauses between words. I'm going to say each word or phrase quickly, one after another. And I want you to repeat it back immediately, right on top of my voice, the way we practiced with shadowing earlier. Don't think about the definition. Just let your mouth move. Ready? Here we go. Quickly now. Groggy, second nature, restless, wired, triage, firing on all cylinders, running a bit behind, frazzled, tedious, monotonous, gratifying, fulfilling, reservations, forthright, blunt, tactful, exasperated, disgruntled, a bit put out, moving goalposts, friction, resilient, complacent, content, candid, keeps their cards close to their chest, relentless, running on empty, breathing room, apprehensive, daunting, formidable, streamlined, upfront, overselling, plausible, dubious, skeptical, unwind, decompress, recharge, restorative, rejuvenating, draining, replenish, hollow, switch off, introspective, spontaneous, articulate, meandering, digress. Nice work. You just moved through 53 words at real conversational speed, without stopping to translate, without slowing down to think. That's exactly the kind of rapid recall that builds true fluency, not just recognition. Let's add a handful more before we close, rounding us out nicely within our target range. When something requires a huge, sustained mental effort, something genuinely difficult to sustain focus on, we might call it grueling. The training program was grueling, but I came out of it so much stronger. When someone handles a difficult situation with impressive calm and control, we say they're composed. Even under that kind of pressure, she stayed remarkably composed. And finally, when you finally reach a state of full understanding after confusion, there's a lovely, precise phrase. It clicked. For weeks, nothing made sense, and then suddenly it just clicked. Say all three with me. The training was grueling. She stayed composed. Eventually, it clicked. That brings our total to 56 solid real C1 to C2 words and phrases, every single one wrapped around a scene you can actually picture. A groggy morning, a frazzled commute, a candid conversation with a friend, a restorative evening winding down. That's the entire philosophy behind natural word English. Vocabulary that lives inside real moments, not lists you forget by tomorrow. Before we finish, here's your task, and I want you to actually do this, not just nod along. Sometime today, in a real conversation, a text message, or even just talking to yourself, use one of today's words. Maybe tell someone you're feeling a bit frazzled, or that you finally got to decompress, or that a task felt oddly gratifying. Then come back and comment below with the sentence you used. I read every single one, and using a word once in a real moment does more for your fluency than reviewing a list 10 times. If this lesson helped you think about your own daily life a little more clearly in English, hit subscribe, tap the bell so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Until then, take care of yourself and go say something candid to someone today.